Well, we're back for another season of Emily's Reading Corner, where we are going to start reading Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Don't know a thing about her, so we're going to do a quick, fun little getting to know you with Mary Shelley because I couldn't tell you a thing about her. This book, obviously, I mean, we kind of maybe all know the general story of Frankenstein, but I've just never read it. So, Mary Shelley looks like she was born in 1797. So, she's older than Jane Austen because Jane Austen was born before. She's younger. Jane Austen was born in December 1775. That's right, because it was so near the American Revolution. And Mary Shelley, what did I just say, is younger because she was born later. So she hasn't been on the earth as long, and she was born in 1797. She died in 1851. So she got to live a little longer than Jane Austen, which is really nice that she got to do that. Let's see. She was born in London. She died of a brain tumor? What? Okay, here are 5. How did they know that she died of a brain tumor? What? Brain tumor. How did they even know that? A series of strokes was the cause of death due to similar symptoms. I cannot imagine having a stroke back then. For years before her death, Shelley experienced headaches, paralysis, including unilateral weakness or hemiparesis, and aphasia, which is difficulty speaking. Her doctor officially attributed her death to a tumor in the left hemisphere of her brain, which they believe developed for some time. How do they know that? A discovery of her unpublished letters revealed that the handwriting became increasingly scrawled over time, suggesting potential degenerative condition. Wow. That would be terrible to deal with during that time. Okay, 5 fun facts about Mary Shelley. She's the daughter of a feminist, Mary Wollstonecraft, and philosopher William Goodwin, who were both prominent writers. She wrote the Gothic novel Frankenstein when she was 19, and a work considered to be the first science fiction story. Mary Shelley wrote the first science fiction story, which was Frankenstein. Okay. Frankenstein was first published anonymously, and Mary Shelley only later released it under her own name. Her life was marked by personal tragedy, including the early deaths of her mother and several children. She continued to write throughout her life, producing various novels, short stories, and biographical works beyond Frankenstein. She was born to an intellectual family. However, her mother died just 11 days after her birth. Frankenstein was written during a year without summer, during a dreary summer in 1816. Where was she born? She was born in the United Kingdom. Geneva, Switzerland. While staying in Geneva, she was staying in Geneva, Switzerland. Shelley and her companions, including her husband, Percy Bysshe Shelley, Lord Byron? She spent a summer with Lord Byron. Okay, Mary. And John Polidori had a ghost story competition. Shelley's winning entry was the beginning of Frankenstein. Frankenstein is considered foundational work in science fiction. That's cool. Mary Shelley endured significant tragedy throughout her life, including the loss of her mother shortly after her birth, her own first child dying prematurely, and eventually the death of her husband in a boating accident. Wow. Sheesh, that's terrible. She was 53 when she died, so she still died very young. Oh, man. Let's see. Life and career. Early life. Earliest days were happy. That's nice. Goodwin was often deeply in debt. Her dad, okay. He could not raise kids by himself, and he definitely needed a second wife. Sure. Wow. Well, let's read, because I know there is a... Okay, Frankenstein or the modern Prometheus. Did I request thee, maker, from my clay, to mold me, man? Did I solicit thee from darkness to promote me? That's from Paradise Lost. I don't know anything about Paradise Lost either. So let's look up Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost. Okay, it's by John Milton. It's an epic poem by 17th century English writer John Milton. Retells the biblical story of Adam and Eve's expulsion from Eden and the fall of humanity. Whoa. Blank verse by English poet. Wow. Why was Paradise Lost banned? Paradise Lost was banned by the Catholic Church in 1732 due to its perceived anti-Catholic theology, portrayal of God and Satan contrary to the Church's teachings, and the sympathetic portrayal of Satan, which was seen as heretical and potentially inspiring rebellion. Wow. Can Catholics read Paradise Lost? Wow. What meter? Because I want to know, because I was just watching somebody talking about the meter of Shakespeare. What meter is Paradise Lost written in? Unrhymed iambic pentameter. Each line of the verse is 10 syllables and 5 pairs of unstressed followed by stressed syllables. Okay. Da-dum, da-dum, da-dum. Da-dum. Emphasis on the dumb. Da-dum. Did I request thee, maker, from my clay? Okay, got it. Sorry. Frankenstein, Mary Shelly, or the modern Prometheus. I did not know that it was called Or the Modern Prometheus. Let's read the author's introduction. It's short. The publishers of the standard novels, in selecting Frankenstein for one of their series, expressed a wish that I should furnish them with some account of the origin of the story. I am the more willing to comply because I shall thus give a general answer to the question so very frequently asked me, how I, then a young girl, came to think of and to dilate upon so very hideous an idea. Women, because men have such crazy thoughts. Men have such insane, crazy thoughts that they can't even imagine a woman dreaming up anything because their thoughts in their head are so crazy. Is that what this means? It is true that I'm very averse to bringing myself forward in print, but as my account will only appear as an appendage to a former production, and as it will be confined to such topics as have connection with my authorship alone, I can scarcely accuse myself of a personal intrusion. It is not singular that as the daughter of two persons of distinguished literary celebrity, I should very early in life have thought of writing. As a child, I scribbled, and my favorite pastime during the hours given me for recreation was to write stories. Still, I had a dearer pleasure than this, which was the formation of castles in the air, the indulging in waking dreams. Kids these days. Kids these days indulging in dreams and writing stories, and we get Frankenstein out of that. Okay. The following up trains of thought which had for their subject the formation of a succession of imaginary incidents. My dreams were at once more fantastic and agreeable than my writings. In the latter, I was a close imitator, rather doing as others had done than putting down the suggestions of my own mind. What I wrote was intended at least for one other eye, my childhood's companion and friend. But my dreams were all my own. I accounted for them to nobody. They were my refuge when annoyed, my dearest pleasure when free. That's really beautiful, Mary. Mary, that's beautiful. I lived principally in the country as a girl and passed a considerable time in Scotland. Oh, cool. I made occasional visits to the more picturesque parts, but my habitual residence was on the blank and dreary northern shores of Tay, near Dundee. Blank and dreary on retrospection, I call them. They were not so to me then. They were the airy... It looks an awful lot like the word Jane Eyre. Wait, I don't even know how to spell it. Eyry. Como se dice? Freaking... A high inaccessible nest of bird of prey, or figuratively in a high remote dwelling, built on a cliff. Wow. Airy. They were the airy of freedom and the pleasant region where, unheeded, I could commune with the creatures of my fancy. I wrote then, but in a most commonplace style. It was beneath the trees of the grounds belonging to our house, or on the bleak sides of the woodless mountains near, that my true compositions, the airy, A-I-R-Y now, flights of my imagination were born and fostered. That's so beautiful. I did not make myself the heroine of my tales. Life appeared to me too commonplace an affair as regarded myself. I could not figure myself the romantic woes or wonderful events would ever be my lot. But I was not confined to my own identity, and I could people the hours with creations far more interesting to me at that age than my own sensations. After this, my life became busier, and reality stood in place of fiction. My husband, however, was from the very first very anxious that I should prove myself worthy of my parentage and enroll myself on the page of fame. A page of fame. He was forever inciting me to obtain literary reputation, which, even on my own part, I cared for then, though since I have become infinitely indifferent to it. At this time he desired that I should write, not so much with the idea that I could produce anything worthy of notice, but that he might himself judge how far I possessed the promise of the better things hereafter. Still I did nothing. Travelling and the cares of a family occupied my time, and study in the way of reading or improving my ideas in communication with his far more cultivated mind was all of literary employment that engaged my attention. In the summer of 1816... Wow. When did Jane Austen die? Everything now is from the lens of Jane Austen. She died a year before in 1817. In the summer of 1816, we visited Switzerland and became neighbours of Lord Byron. At first we spent our pleasant hours on the lake or wandering on its shores, and Lord Byron, who was writing his third canto of Childe Harold, was the only one among us who put his thoughts upon paper. These, as he brought them successfully to us, clothed in all the light and harmony of poetry, seemed to stamp as divine the glories of heaven and earth, whose influences we partook with him. But it proved a wet, ungenial summer, and incessant rain often confined us for days to the house. Some volumes of ghost stories translated from the German and French fell into our hands. There was the history of the inconstant lover who, when he thought to clasp the bride to whom he had pledged his vows, found himself in the arms of the pale ghost of her whom he had deserted. There was the tale of the sinful founder of his race, whose miserable doom was to bestow the kiss of death on all the younger sons of his ill-fated house, just when they reached the age of promise. His gigantic shadowy form, clothed like the ghost in Hamlet, in complete armour, but with the beaver up, was seen at midnight by the moon's fitful beams to advance slowly along the gloomy avenue. The shape was lost beneath the shadow of the castle walls, but soon a gate swung back, a step was heard, the door of the chamber opened, and he advanced to the couch of the blooming youths, cradled in healthy sleep. Eternal sorrow sat upon his face as he bent down and kissed the forehead of the boys who from that hour withered like flowers snapped upon the stalk. I have not seen these stories since, but their incidents are as fresh in my mind as if I read them yesterday. "We will each write a ghost story," said Lord Byron, and his proposition was acceded to. There were 4 of us. The noble author began a tale, a fragment which he printed at the end of his poem of Mazeppa. Shelley, more apt to embody ideas and sentiments in the radiance of brilliant imagery, and in the music of the most melodious verse that adorns our language, than to invent the machinery of a story, commenced one founded on the experiences of his early life. Poor Polidori had some terrible idea about a skull-headed lady who was so punished for peeping through a keyhole, what to see I forgot, something very shocking and wrong, of course, but when she was reduced to a worse condition than the renowned Tom of Coventry, he did not know what to do with her, and was obliged to dispatch her to the tomb of the Capulets, the only place for which she was fitted. Was Juliet the Capulet, or was she a Montague? I think she... I can't remember. I think she was a Capulet. I don't remember. I'm trying to remember. It's so sad, but I am trying to remember what was on, what's his face's gun? John Leguizamo's gun. I think it's Capulet. It's terrible. The illustrious poets, also annoyed by the platitude of prose, speedily relinquished their uncongenial task. I busied myself to think of a story to rival those which had excited us to this task, one which would speak to the mysterious fears of our nature and awaken thrilling horror, one to make the reader dread to look round, to curdle the blood and quicken the beatings of her heart. If I did not accomplish these things, my ghost story would be unworthy of its name. I thought and pondered vainly. I felt that blank incapability of invention, which is the greatest misery of authorship, when dull nothing replies to our anxious invocations. "Have you thought of a story?" I was asked each morning, and each morning I was forced to reply with a mortifying negative. Everything must have a beginning, to speak in Sanchian phrase, and that beginning must be linked to something that went before. The Hindus give the world an elephant to support it, but they make the elephant stand upon a tortoise. Invention, it must be humbly admitted, does not exist in creating out of void, but out of chaos. The materials must, in the first place, be afforded. It can give form to dark, shapeless substances, but cannot bring into being the substance itself. In all matters of discovery and invention, even of those that appertain to the imagination, we are continually reminded of the story of Columbus and his egg. What is Columbus and his egg? What is that? Columbus and his egg? The Columbus egg story is an anecdote where Christopher Columbus, challenged to make an egg stand on its end, does so by cracking its bottom slightly to create a stable base. The tale illustrates that a difficult task becomes simple once it's understood and demonstrates the importance of innovation, though the story is likely apocryphal, and a similar tale existed for architect Filippo Brunelleschi. The phrase Columbus's egg now refers to a simple solution to a seemingly difficult problem. I've never heard that before in my life. Columbus and his egg. Invention consists in the capacity of seizing on the capabilities of a subject and in the power of molding and fashioning ideas suggested to it. Many and long were the conversations between Lord Byron and Shelley, to which I was a devout but nearly silent listener. Important to be silent when listening. During one of these, various philosophical doctrines were discussed, and among others, the nature of the principle of life, and whether there was any probability of its ever being discovered and communicated. They talked of the experiments of Dr. Darwin. When was Dr. Darwin around? Charles Darwin. 1809 to 1882. Okay. Before this. Cool. I mean, obviously before this, but I just don't know when people are alive anymore. They talked of the experiments of Dr. Darwin. I speak not that of what the doctor really did or said he did, but as more to my purpose of what was then spoken of as having been done by him. Whoa. There we go. That's an intense thing to say at this time. Who preserved a piece of vermicelli in a glass, till by some extraordinary means it began to move with voluntary motion. Not thus, after all, would life be given. Perhaps a corpse would be reanimated. Galvanism had given token of such things. Perhaps the component parts of a creature might be manufactured, brought together, and endued with the vital warmth. Night waned upon this talk, and even the witching hour had gone by. 3 a.m. is the witching hour, before we retired to rest. When I had placed my head on my pillow, I did not sleep, nor could I be said to think. My imagination, unbidden, possessed and guided me, gifting the successive images that arose in my mind with a vividness far beyond the usual bound of reverie. I saw, with shut eyes, but acute mental vision. I saw the pale student of unhallowed arts kneeling beside the thing he had put together. I saw the hideous phantasm of man stretched out, and then, on the working of some powerful engine, show signs of life, and stir with an uneasy, half-vital motion. Frightful must it be, for supremely frightful would be the effect of any human endeavour to mock the stupendous mechanism of the Creator of the world. His success would terrify the artist. He would rush away from his odious handiwork, horror-stricken. He would hope that, left to itself, the slight spark of life which he had communicated would fade, that this thing, which had received such imperfect animation, would subside into dead matter. And he might sleep in the belief that the silence of the grave would quench forever this transient existence of the hideous corpse which he had looked upon as the cradle of life. He sleeps, but he is awakened. He opens his eyes. Behold the horrid thing that stands at his bedside, opening his curtains and looking on him with yellow, watery, but speculative eyes. I opened mine in terror. The idea so possessed my mind that a thrill of fear ran through me, and I wished to exchange the ghastly image of my fancy for the realities around. I see them still, the very room, the dark parquet, the closed shutters, with the moonlight struggling through, and the sense I had that the glassy lake and white high Alps were beyond. I could not so easily get rid of my hideous phantom. Still it haunted me. I must try to think of something else. I recurred to my ghost story, my tiresome, unlucky ghost story. Oh, if I could only contrive one which would frighten my reader as I myself had been frightened that night. Swift as light and as cheering was the idea that broke in upon me. I have found it. What terrified me will terrify others, and I need only describe the spectre which had haunted my midnight pillow. On the morrow I announced that I had thought of a story. I began that day with the words, "It was on a dreary night in November," making only a transcript of the grim terrors of my waking dream. At first I thought but of a few pages, of a short tale, but Shelley urged me to develop the idea at greater length. I certainly did not owe the suggestion of one incident, or scarcely of one train of feeling, to my husband, and yet, but for his incitement, it would never have taken form in which it was presented to the world. From this declaration I must accept the preface. As far as I can recollect, it was written entirely by him. And now, once again, I bid my hideous progeny go forth and prosper. I have an affection for it was the offspring of happy days when death and grief were but words. Oh, I wonder if her freaking husband has died already when she wrote this. That's so sad. Which found no true echo in my heart. Its several pages speak of many a walk, many a drive, and many a conversation when I was not alone, and my companion was one who, in this world, I shall never see more. But this is for myself. My readers have nothing to do with these associations. I will add but one word as the alterations I have made. They are principally those of style. I have changed no portion of the story, nor introduced any new ideas or circumstances. I have mended the language where it was so bold as to interfere with the interest of the narrative, and these changes occur almost exclusively in the beginning of the first volume. Throughout, they are entirely confined to such parts as mere adjuncts to the story, leaving the core and substance of it untouched. Mary something Shelley, London, October 15th, 1831. October 15th is my brother's birthday. And he's the one who gave me that lovely puzzle. Okay, I'll read the preface, which sounds like her husband wrote, which is interesting. Marlowe. Oh, it says Marlowe. I don't know who that is. Marlowe. The event on which this fiction is founded has been supposed by Dr. Darwin and some of the physiological writers of Germany as not of impossible occurrence. I shall not be supposed as recording the remotest degree of serious faith to such an imagination, yet in assuming it as the basis of work of fancy, I have not considered myself as merely weaving a series of supernatural terrors. The event on which the interest of the story depends is exempt from the disadvantages of a mere tale of spectres or enchantment. It was recorded by the novelty of the situations which it develops, and however impossible as a physical fact, affords a point of view to the imagination for the delineation of human passions more comprehensive and commanding than any which the ordinary relations of existing events can yield. I have thus endeavoured to preserve the truth of the elementary principles of human nature, while I have not scrupled to innovate upon their combinations. The Iliad, the tragic poetry of Greece, Shakespeare in The Tempest and Midsummer Night's Dream, and most specially Milton in Paradise Lost conform to this rule, and the most humble novelist who seeks to confer or receive amusement from his labours may without presumption apply to prose fiction a license, or rather a rule, from the adoption of which so many exquisite combinations of human feeling have resulted in the highest specimens of poetry. The circumstance on which my story rests was suggested in casual conversation. It was commenced partly as a source of amusement and partly as an expedient for exercising any untried resources of mind. Other motives were mingled with these as the work proceeded. I am by no means indifferent to the manner in which whatever moral tendencies exist in the sentiments or characters it contains shall affect the reader. Yet my chief concern in this respect has been limited to avoid the innovating effects of the novels of the present day, and to the exhibition of the amiableness of the domestic affection and the excellence of universal virtue. The opinions which naturally spring from the character and the situation of the hero are by no means to be conceived as existing always in my own conviction, nor is any inference justly to be drawn from the following pages as prejudicing any philosophical doctrine of whatever kind. Great disclaimer. This video is about to get cancelled. It is a subject also of additional interest to the author that this story was begun in the majestic region where the scene is principally laid, and in society which cannot cease to be regretted. I passed the summer of 1816 in the environs of Geneva. The season was cold and rainy, and in the evenings we crowded round the blazing fire and occasionally amused ourselves with some German stories of ghosts, which happened to fall into our hands. These tales excited in us a playful desire of imitation. 2 other friends, a tale from the pen of one whom could be far more acceptable to the public than anything I can ever hope to produce, and myself agreed to write a story founded on some supernatural occurrence. The weather, however, suddenly became serene, and my 2 friends left me on a journey among the Alps, and lost in the magnificent scenes which they present all memory of their ghostly visions. The following tale is the only one which has been completed. Marlow, September 1817. So we have a classic 3-volume piece. Volume 1 coming up next time. Join me as we are starting Season 8 of Emily's Reading Corner, Frankenstein by Mary Shelly. Happy reading to you all. See you next time. Ta-ta.